I remember the first time I questioned the goodness of God. I was 17, sitting on my bed late at night, shaking from something I had just seen on the news. A story about a war zone, children suffering, cities burning, and prayers going unanswered. I sat there, frozen, thinking, if that question has haunted me for years, not because I stopped believing in the idea of God, but because I started believing something more dangerous, that maybe God isn't who we think he is, and that, my friend, is where Dystheism begins. What is Dystheism? Let's start simple. The word comes from the Greek dys, meaning bad or ill, and theos meaning God. Dystheism is the belief that God, or the gods, might not be wholly good, that divine beings can be cruel, indifferent, or even evil. It doesn't necessarily mean atheism. Dystheists can believe in the existence of a god. They just don't trust him. Think of it like this. You might believe your boss exists, but you wouldn't necessarily call him a good person. That's the core of Dystheism. It's about moral judgment of the divine. A glimpse through history, where Dystheism was, hiding all along. And let me take you back to some ancient stories. Think about Greek mythology. You've got Zeus, the king of the gods, cheating on his wife, hurling thunderbolts at mortals and generally acting like a cosmic bully. Hera, his wife, punishes innocents out of jealousy. And then there's Hades, misunderstood but probably the least cruel of them all. The Norse gods? Odin sacrifices his eye for knowledge and demands human sacrifices. Loki causes chaos and death. These aren't tales of pure goodness. They're stories of flawed, dangerous deities. Even in Abrahamic religions, God has moments that appear, at best, morally ambiguous. In the Old Testament, we see a God who destroys cities, commands genocides, and tests loyalty through suffering. Just ask Job. These acts, though justified in context as divine will, or justice, have always made me uneasy. Is justice the same as goodness? Or is it something colder, my struggles with the problem of evil? Let's talk philosophy. There's this classic dilemma called the problem of evil. It goes something like this. If God is all-powerful, he could stop evil. If God is all good, he would want to stop evil. Evil exists. So, either God is not all-powerful, not all good, or doesn't exist at all. For me, this isn't some dry thought experiment. It's a daily tension. Every time I see innocent suffering, every time I hear about genocides, famine, and senseless acts of violence, I feel this pull in my chest. Where is God in those moments? Some theologians answer with concepts like free, will, or greater plans. But at some point, those answers start to sound like apologies for a system that simply doesn't care. That's when Dystheism becomes not just a theory, but a refuge for doubt. Is God morally accountable? Here's a question I never learned to ask in church. If God commands something evil, does that make it good? Or does it mean God is evil? In traditional religious systems, God defines morality. If he says it's good, it's good. But that logic can be terrifying. It means anything, even the most horrific acts, can be deemed righteous if God wills it. Think about the binding of Isaac. God commands Abraham to kill his son. Sure, he stops him at the last second. But what kind of God tests loyalty by demanding a human sacrifice? If a human did that, we'd call it abuse. But for God, we call it a test. This leads to divine command theory. The idea that morality is whatever God says. Dystheism flips that. Maybe we should judge God by human morality, not the other way around. From Job to modern writers, Dystheism in the canon, the book of Job haunted me. Here's a righteous man, destroyed by Satan. with God's permission, just to prove a point. Job loses his wealth, health, children. He asks why, and God answers not with comfort, but with authority. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? It's a power play, not a loving explanation. That, to me, is Dystheism in scriptural form. Modern authors have picked up the torch. Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials trilogy, Neil Gaiman's American Gods, even Alan Moore's depiction of divinity in Watchmen. They all wrestle with gods who aren't benevolent. They are flawed, political, even monstrous. How Dystheism changed. My faith, I didn't become an atheist, but I stopped trusting that the universe is being governed by a force of pure love. Instead, I started seeing divinity like a force of nature, unpredictable, amoral, untouchable, like the ocean. It can be beautiful, yes, but it can also drown you without blinking. I find a strange peace in that. It helps me accept that bad things don't need a reason. It frees me from pretending suffering is part of a plan. It lets me grieve honestly and live with eyes wide open. What if Dystheism is true? If Dystheism is correct, what changes? First, we become responsible for morality. We stop outsourcing ethics to a deity and start building a system rooted in compassion, empathy, and reason. Second, we reclaim the right to question, to protest divine cruelty, to be like Job, not because we want to be punished, but because we believe questioning is holy. Finally, we find freedom in uncertainty. We don't have to pretend anymore. We can say, I don't know if God is good, but I choose to be. Thanks for staying with me through that deep dive into Dystheism. Whether you believe, doubt, or rage against the heavens, I hope this video gave you something to think about. If it did, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop your thoughts below. I read every comment, and I'd love to know. What do you believe about the nature of God? Until next time, question everything, seek truth, and take care of each other.